Yeah,
Okay.
we're live. Alex.
We are live. Yes. Drew. Huh? What? Huh? Yes, babe.
8 more days till Halloween. 8 more days till Halloween.
I don't want it.
We're talking about Halloween season of the witch here on Cinema Bias tonight. Guys, welcome. And here's some
Thanks
credits.
So much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank
Drew,
you. Yeah.
I have to ask, you in particular, without going into details about this movie, there are 3 important masks in this movie. Would you want to pick a skeleton, a witch, or a pumpkin as your mask of choice?
Give me 30 seconds to think about it while we play our intro music. Okay, I thought about it. So it reminds me kind of the show Attack on Titan, where it's like one of the Titans, like you absorb Titan's powers, you become these big monsters. But one of the Titans, their power is just that they're called the female Titan, and it's like really so. Like if you're eat a dude and you eat this Titan or whatever, your power is that you're a female. Like that doesn't seem like a power. So I would go with witch, because it's like the most gendered one of them. And in this particular movie, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, it has some really interesting ideas about what witches are. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm excited to talk about this with you. I'm excited to talk about it with our guest today. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. By the way, we're going to be diving into this horror cult classic. But before I dive into that one, dive into everyone's favorite segment of the show, which is Tell Me the Plot. Drew's going to really paint that lovely picture for us. Let's go and introduce our guest today. He is a kick-ass competitor in First Class League. He is an amazing competitor all around and just a really cool YouTuber. Definitely go check his stuff out with the Cinefanatics. His name is Mr. Robert Adams.
Robert Adams, yay! Hey, Robert. We getting flagged? You know what? No. Screw it, I don't care.
That's why I played like two seconds and like done.
We cannot get flagged because it is open source, or it's like common. That's the whole point. That's why it's London Bridge.
Yeah, perhaps not the lyrics.
Okay, so how about I just yell over it? This song will get stuck in your head.
Oh God, yes, it will.
Robert.
Anyways, yeah, I'm doing great.
Nice to see you.
How are y'all?
Pretty good. So if you guys don't know, if this is your guys' first time on the show, Cinema Bias is a show where me and Alex explore each other's sort of biases for and against certain kinds of programming and sort of expand our worldview, or have guests on like Robert to help expand it for us. I know what my bias is going into today's episode, but I'm interested in everyone else's. Before we get started on that, though, guys, you can donate on streamlabs.com/VideoDrew. It is one word. Please don't try Googling it as two. It's one. And you can send money that way or via Super Chats. Every dollar bit send helps, because we have some big plans for the upcoming future. And yeah, I want to know, Robert, why this film?
Because this is easily the best, most underrated movie of the entire Halloween franchise. Because it is the only one that doesn't involve Michael Myers. Which I'm not against those movies. Like, I like a good slasher movie. I'm a huge like horror movie nut, which, by the way, Drew, I'm extremely jealous of your exhibition match you have coming up pretty soon.
Oh yeah, I'm going to. I know I'm like the favorite going into that match, but we can talk about that later.
I would say ever since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to play William Bibiani in an exhibition Schmoedown horror match. So
it's
super jealous.
Well, look, I'm not discounting Adam Collins or Bibiani as players, but you know, I think that the money's on me for this one.
Yeah. I really like this movie. I like how weird and wacky and off the wall that it ended up going, especially because it doesn't have Michael Myers in it. So
especially, well, spoiler alert, this movie does not have Michael Myers in it. No. Not only does it not have Michael Myers in it, but when we can get into it a little bit, but before I describe the plot, I do want to say this movie exists in a world in which Halloween is a movie, not a documentary. So it doesn't even take place within the world of the Halloween franchise. It takes place in our world, and that's weird. That's all I gotta say for this segment.
I didn't think of it like that, but you're totally right. Mike Myers, the character, actually technically does make a cameo in a picture.
Well, he's on TV. They're watching Halloween several times.
Exactly. And same for Jamie Lee Curtis. She actually has a cameo over the phone about 30 minutes in, which is apparently you have to really hunt to find it, which is kind of funny.
She's also the announcer, the woman saying that the curfew's in effect, that 6 p.m.
Well, we've got to get into this. Okay, we're gonna get into this. Let's before chaos reigns. Let's talk real quick. What's our biases?
Okay, so starting with our guest, though, movie horrors and all that good stuff aside, why this movie? We've been wanting to have you come on this show for a long time, and at the end of the day, we only ask you to pick a movie that either Drew and I have not seen. So why this movie in particular for this date?
So this movie I like, kind of like what I was saying. It's outside of the Michael Myers. The original concept for the Halloween movies is they were all supposed to be anthology movies that take place around Halloween, and that was the common thread throughout them. So like the first movie was a slasher movie. The second movie, they wanted to do a follow-up to the first movie, and I think that's where they really shot themselves in the foot. They should have done like the follow-up, like maybe 8 movies down the line or so. But yeah, they immediately followed up the first one with this direct sequel to that story. And then the third one became the all-new story, which is why people just didn't like it for the most part. They were expecting by now a third movie about Michael Myers, and that's
it's very
not what
confusing.
they were trying to do. Yeah.
You watch one movie and you're like, that was Michael Myers movie, and here's a sequel about a completely different thing. That's fine. We get it. Same universe. You do 2 movies about Michael Myers, and the third movie is about a world in which Michael Myers is a movie. That's weird. It's a weird thing to do.
But this one, like out of all the horror movies, like I like different types of horror movies. Slashers are okay. There's a couple of slashers I really love. There's a couple of them that are just kind of generic. A lot of Halloween and Friday the 13th are kind of generic to me. There's bits and pieces of them that I love, but yeah, they're just kind of a very generic slasher horror movie to me. So that's why I like the third one, because it went in a different direction. It has like more of like that film noir detective trying to solve a mystery type of element to it, while there's still bits and pieces of horror to it.
Yeah, I especially like the film noir angle where he sleeps with somebody who I think is supposed to be like the age of a daughter to him. That's my favorite part of this entire movie. Alex, why haven't you seen this movie?
This is actually the first Halloween sequel that I've seen. I have not seen I've only seen the first Halloween film, and I saw it for the first time last year during my Halloween movie marathon, where I watched almost 40 horror movies in the span of a month. I was really intense on it, trying to catch up with a lot of them. But yeah, so this is the first Halloween sequel that I've seen. And
have you seen a reboot?
No.
You haven't? Okay, so this is just this. As far as you know, Michael Myers died or disappeared, and now we're just on this movie. That's cool.
Yes, it's definitely a unique one. Like I mentioned, one of my big biases when it comes to the horror genre is that I'm a very new horror movie fan. I did not grow up with horror movies. I didn't have anyone in my family introduce me to the genre. It was, if anything, more Drew that really got me into horror movies.
Drew and your mother doing Silence of the Lambs. It's pretty bad. That's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, but she that's true, but she didn't consider those horror movies. She considered them thriller that was important for me to watch as a woman, as a female. She was like, Alex, you need to sit down and watch this movie.
As a woman, you might get Buffalo Billed. Yeah, I don't know where you grew up, but there's a good chance of getting Buffalo Billed in any small town in America.
Yeah, but I mean, I have not seen a bunch of the horror classic movies, and so I'm very much playing catch up. And so this one in particular is something I'm very grateful to watch, just because it is not only so weird and unique, but it plays with a lot of very interesting themes that I now identify with a lot of other classic horror movies. So there's a lot to dive into. What about you, Drew?
Okay, this one, that's really interesting to hear you guys say that, because here's my experience with this movie or franchise. I'm like with Robert, slashers are fine. They're the most boring to me because and also like the hardest to watch. They're both boring and like they make me like uncomfortable, like anxious, because they could actually happen. And like, it's just a person. Like, yeah, I get that he's like super powered, or at some point he becomes dead and undead or whatever. Or I don't know, not with Michael. Oh, at one point with Michael, but then they undo it. Whatever.
It looks like it's a Michael Myers thing.
Yeah, I find it to be like Jason, Michael. I find them inherently uninteresting because they are just guys who are they're like monoliths. They just are go. This movie, I'd never seen before. It is so batshit that I like was questioning my sanity while watching. And I watch a lot of crazy horror movies. I watch like the Serbian movie. I watch all of them.
Oh,
this movie had like a Baskin. If I can make my Baskin like reference here, the Turkish film Baskin, where like my mind was melting while watching it, and I'm not sure if I really understood by the end what this had to do with A, Halloween, B, witches, or C, like the whole franchise of this, of the concept of Halloween, the holiday, let alone Halloween the movie. I'm baffled, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting movie to pick. Not only just because I do want to kind of touch on a handful of very core facts before we dive into the plot of the movie. Now, this movie, I believe, was released in 1982, so it's a few years have passed between this and the events of the first one, obviously, and I do need to double check.
The second one takes place the same night as the first one, right? It's directly after.
It's an immediate follow-up.
Yeah, okay, so same year.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also the director of this movie, I believe, is like Tommy Lee Wallace.
Yep.
I want to say, but the thing is, he's actually considered one of for a long time he was involved with making the first Halloween film, the second one, but he was also involved creatively on site very regularly. He's considered one of the people that John Carpenter really took under his wing and really mentored for an extended period of time.
You know how you can tell, Alex? Because John Carpenter clearly did the score for this movie as well, but it's even crazier than the regular John Carpenter scores. This movie is all synth. This movie is like if the regular John Carpenter score just went to like a Halloween rave hosted by Tangerine Dream or something, or Rush. Like, I don't even know.
He actually collaborated on the score with Alan Howarth, and so Alan Howarth, this is honestly, now I think about it, I don't know if it's one of the only collaborations, but Alan Howarth, he also did Escape from New York, he did They Live, he ended up working on Robert Rodriguez's Planet Terror, a few Star Trek movies, so a lot of now very established professionals behind the scenes, design people, things like that, were involved in this scene from the get-go, which is really interesting to see.
And look what happened. This. Now,
so weird.
It does kind of beg the question, is this movie itself like a sort of conjuring? Was this movie perhaps the ritual that needed to happen to make these people like famous directors? Maybe in order to sell yourself to the devil, this director, Tommy Lee Wallace, just had to make this movie. He had to go put this movie out into the world because it is nonsensical, even by Ari Aster standards of crazy.
Well, speaking of nonsensical, Drew, I'm going to need you to make sense of this plot and tell me the plot in 1 minuto.
Okay, yeah, this isn't going to happen, right? And I might not even have the right plot. Like, I'm not sure if I caught everything that was really going on. Okay, I'll go. Okay, ready?
Okay. Let me get my clock ready. You have 1 minute on the clock, and then right after, Robert, you and I are going to tell her what the fuck she missed. Get ready.
Yeah, just fill in the rest of the plot for me.
Right. You have 1 minute on the clock, starting right now.
Okay, so there's this guy who owns a Halloween store, and he's getting chased by this well-dressed man in a parking lot, and the well-dressed man gets crushed by a truck, but the guy also dies. And then they're like, 8 more days till Halloween. It's a commercial that's running all throughout the town. And apparently everywhere in the world, it's not just regional, it's for these masks. And it's like, hey, kids, for Halloween night, why don't you stay at home and watch TV for this very special broadcast while we broadcast the idea of a mask store, which wouldn't be relevant on Halloween night. Whatever. Turns out that was due to witches that run a mask store, but it's not a witches, it's a warlock. And the warlock makes robots. And a detective who is now sleeping with the daughter of the guy who was killed and is approximately like half his age. And then she turns out to be a robot. And it turns out everyone's watching the broadcast, and the kids' heads turn into pumpkins, even though we see the kids going out on Halloween night. So why they're home to watch TV. And then we end it with the guy being like, turn it off. And their heads turn into pumpkins. And there's
time. Well, you're on point for everything you said. Technically, everything you said was
technically accurate.
Technically incredibly accurate. There are just a few things I feel like you missed.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I missed a few things. I would love to hear what the hell's going on here.
It's just so weird. Robert, what was something that Drew missed in her plot synopsis?
So he's the doctor that the toy store owner at the beginning was being treated by.
Oh, that's right. He's a doctor.
Yeah,
weird.
so, which is weird for the plot of this because he's a doctor, then all of a sudden he becomes a detective. Like he calls his ex-wife and says, hey, I can't be there for the kids. Basically lying to his ex-wife, and then goes off on like some mystery adventure. I don't know why a doctor feels the need to all of a sudden like be like Columbo and go.
Well, I assumed it was to get laid, but I also assumed he was a detective. But also, I don't know why he would go do this. It's not like what he saw in the hospital was that concerning, I don't think, even though people turn out to be robots.
He would just be like, oh, that was some weird shit, and then just move on with like,
yeah, he was
see
like,
the next patient.
Right, yeah. And not something else that wasn't touched on at all is the reason why they're doing this.
Oh.
Now they're not.
Oh, I can tell you. I can tell you the reason why. It's because they're Wiccans. This warlock is a Wiccan who also believes really highly in astrology. So he says that they've been around, this sect or whatever has been around for thousands of years, and it's all about when the planets align, and that's on Halloween night. Even though technically I think witches believe in like a Devil's Night, which is the night before. No, this guy, it's Halloween night. That's when they're going to do this ritual where all the masks that he's manufactured in what looks like a science thing, like he's a scientist, but he's also a witch, and they need to make kids run red with blood or make the streets run red with child's blood, and then it will do something. And that's as far as I understood it.
Yeah, the planets are in alignment, which happens once in however millennia, and so they need to kill a bunch of kids for some reason.
What though? Like, are they hailing Timon? Like, is it?
They're wanting to bring back like the Celtic form of witchcraft. He's just doing it to reignite witchcraft.
Okay.
Through like Celtic rituals and Stonehenge and
that doesn't even seem like the
and the giant region. The obelisk rock is actually it's referenced. There was actually during someone was watching on TV a special on Stonehenge in particular, and the mystery.
That's the guy. Yeah, I will say this movie has a very fun, almost Cronenbergian relationship to the media inside of the film. Like I mentioned earlier, Halloween is a movie that is playing in this world, and they're not like, welcome back to the documentary of the time Laurie Strode killed that dude. So it's like a movie. So the only thing we know about this world is it exists outside of Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Fucking what?
Exactly. It's weird.
Fucking what?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, that's the only thing I feel like you missed overall. And the ending is definitely an ending I did not expect in the slightest. Is that essentially everyone died?
Well, no, it's left ambiguous.
Yeah,
it's very ambiguous.
You know what they did for the ending? It was very bold. I was talking to Eric about this. What they did for the ending, they were like, "What if we just didn't end it? Like, what if we just we just cut it off in the middle of a shot? Never not even resolve." The main issue of why these, how many kids are affected, because we do see a shot of it being like Ohio, New York, California. So we get the sense that this regional commercial for a mask store or a mask type of 3 different masks That commercial's been playing for at least a week in every town in America, and every kid is glued to their set. And even though we see them leaving their house to go trick-or-treating, they're all going to be back in time to watch the thing, at which point a magic thing will turn their heads into pumpkins.
Well, they mentioned there's a bunch of commercials that are playing. There's some kind of contest, and they're mentioning this is not towards adults. These are with kids in particular, like younger kids, like under the age of 15.
Halloween night.
And like there's kids in the commercial and everything, and they have like cars driving around neighborhoods with intercom saying, "Be home by 9 o'clock."
I mean, fair enough.
TV by 9.
That's fair enough, but like you try telling a child that it needs to come home in time to watch the TV at 9 p.m. on Halloween night. I feel like most kids aren't going to be into that. We do see it happen.
Correct.
I'm also confused. I'm also confused by several points. Maybe you guys can help clarify this. The guy is like, it's very unexplained because he has all these like well-dressed men in suits who like are apparently indestructible, and it turns out they're robots. So what happens is this detective doctor drives to the town where he find out that the guy's dad bought, or the chick's dad bought the mask store. So they go to Silver Shamrock, the factory that makes the masks. And luckily, that's just where all the magic is happening. So they don't need to figure out any more detective stuff. They just go to the mask place. That's it. That's where the thing is. And it turns out all the guys are robots. So this Celtic astrological Wiccan witch who wants to bring back the old gods is also a Westworld type bioengineer of robot hosts and can like do that. I'm just confused. And then he spends most of the third act of the movie on the phone with various shareholders, reminding them to put their kids in front of the TV at 9 p.m., which is like a little bit like hands-on, I feel like, for a guy who can just delegate that to one of his 100 robot orders.
He's a businessman. I mean, he's in it to win it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what is the end goal here? Why is he on the phone with the shareholders?
His goal, he doesn't care about the shareholders. He just cares about making sure kids die. Which is
that the most effective way to talk, to get to the message out? Like, don't call up and we find out, by the way, that the shareholders have called him. So people that are like very invested in this mask distribution company with robots. Anyway, that's what I gotta say about this film.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. I do want to kind of dive into our next segment of our show where we kind of dive into our big, bold take regarding this movie. Now, when I say bold take, I just mean like this movie does like the best example of this. This movie has like this best performance. This has like the weirdest this, and somehow it makes it work, or somehow,
or just like your hottest take,
or just your big take regarding this movie as a whole.
What's your hottest take? Yeah,
like you did mention a hot take earlier. Your bold take, not a hot take, regarding how it's most underappreciated Halloween sequel.
Ooh.
Do you kind of stick to that, or is there any other big take or hot take or bold take surrounding this movie for you?
Hot take, what's your take?
Real quick. I know, like some of mine, we've already said, like, I don't understand why this doctor is all of a sudden involved in this. It's just kind of the whole thing of like, it's witchcraft, but it involves these masks that have microchips with pieces of Stonehenge in the microchips.
Right.
Or when put on the kids' heads, it like, I guess it like turns their head, it decomposes their heads, and it doesn't make any sense.
But also putting those microchips into buttons and throwing the buttons onto the heads of the robots make the robots die. So the power of Stonehenge. People
like how he's a witch. He's good at witchcraft and developing masks for Halloween and building robots and I agree.
Killing it.
This movie's bonkers.
Great.
It's. I after hearing everything you're saying, I agree with everything you're saying. It's a movie. I've created in the C2A Discord movie chat in particular, I do like a movie question of the day, essentially. And in that chat, and one of the questions was, what is a movie you appreciate, but actively dislike or can't stand watching.
Oh, so like it's the with all due respect question.
Yes, but you watch it and you're like, I appreciate it, and I think it's actually important for X, Y, and Z reason.
With all due respect.
Or maybe you find, or maybe it's like the making of said movie is just more interesting to you. Like for me, Les Mis, from with Hugh Jackman, all that. The making of
anything by Terrence Malick for me.
I hate the movie.
Anything by Terrence Malick, I don't get it. The end.
There you go.
But Alex, what did they say in the chat?
It's not a Halloween movie without doctors. Do you concur?
No. I mean, absolutely. I believe that not even is it not a Halloween with a movie without doctors. I believe it's not really Halloween until you see a doctor. And that's how you know. That's usually the traditional sign of how you figure out it's October 31st is when you see all the doctors on the street with their bags of bones going around house to house saying, give us something good to eat. I don't know. Yeah, I would say my hot take on this film, if you're asking me, is that wow, this movie really has left me speechless. I don't know what they were on. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know if this is like based on something or if the script, it maybe feels like it got edited a lot because there are some elements here of like a very interesting story that does also feel like an anthology story, which is to say, it feels like it's supposed to be 1/4 of the length and exist in a movie that has 3 other sections, like VHS or, what's another anthology movie? Trick or Treat or Creep Show. It feels like it's just supposed to be one segment of something. It doesn't feel like, and that segment belongs to a larger universe where they're watching things from it and it all kind of Ryan Murphy universe combines. And it's all little Easter eggs. It does not feel like it's supposed to be a full-length movie. And it certainly does not feel like it's supposed to be a full-length movie that spends 90% of its time trying to be like, what happened to the dad? And then 10% of the time being like, also the kids turn into pumpkins and the guy who makes the mask makes robots and also he's a witch. And also like, it is just so much information at the end. It's like Jordan Peele watched this movie and then decided to make Us. I don't know.
I definitely agree with you. It's definitely, in terms of this movie being...
Is that you? Yep. You good?
I think she froze.
Oh, no. Anyway, it's not Halloween until I hear from Dr. Dre, says William. So, yeah, I guess hot take is that, like, part of me loves this movie. Like, a part of me wants this movie to exist in its own universe where, like, it's kind of like Fargo or, like, one of these things where we just take it and make it into a TV show. And it's just its own thing. Because I'm interested. You've got my attention. Do you think when the show resets, it goes like 364 more days till Halloween?
Oh,
like, does it do it by day?
Like every day, multiple times a day? That would be so super annoying.
We hear it consistent. It's on TV constantly. It seems to be the only ad that's playing across America for masks.
It does it 3 times in the first 11 minutes of the movie.
Sort of like yeah, it's kind of like The Purge in that, like, after watching the first one, like, I'm not so much as impressed as I have just so many questions about this universe that I would like answered that I'm almost willing to watch another movie just to find out, like, what this world looks like, why they're all doing what they're doing.
I think the hottest take I could probably have, kind of like I touched upon it earlier, this should have been, if John Carpenter was really wanting to move forward, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill really wanted to move forward with a Halloween anthology series, this should have been Halloween 2. And that what we got as Halloween 2 should have been like Halloween 4, 5, 6. So it should have been like down the line after they firmly established that each movie is going to be different.
I mean, clearly what happened was they firmly established it, and then Halloween came out, and they were like, well, people really like Michael Myers, and specifically they really like that Michael Myers mask, so if we could just fixate on him for a little while longer. And it's sort of like the impulse, I guess, for like the Insidious movies or the Saw movies to focus on characters that have been dead since like the second or third film. To just, we're just going to stick on them. We're going to either like just follow their journey even though they've perspired.
I have to say, sorry about my connection issues. I apologize. I thought I plugged in my computer. I did not. But I'd say one of my big bold takes surrounding this movie is actually it reminded me how much I want movies surrounding the mythology or fantasy behind the Stonehenge in a dark way.
Have you seen this Spinal Tap?
No.
Okay.
And I have discovered, I was like watching this, I was like, you know what? I don't know how, I can't think of any movies outside of like a King Arthur kind of situation where it focuses on the Stonehenge all that much. And I would love to see more. What?
Does Sword in the Stone take place at Stonehenge? The King Arthur?
No, I mean like I've seen several King Arthur like stories where it's like kind of
medieval.
On, medieval.
I don't know anything about Stonehenge. I thought it was like on Easter Island.
No,
that's Easter. That's the big head.
It's definitely in the UK.
Yeah. You guys are right.
There's a lot of mythology, like with Merlin, King Arthur.
Weird.
Druids. Lot of druids.
Easter Head Island. Easter Head Island is what I was thinking of.
But I would actually, I love the idea of a real unknown, witchcraft and mythology. This really extensive mythology that has been present, but it's just been on the outskirts and these itty bitty small communities, like as Children of the Corn and this movie, or things like that, where it's not mainstream, and I would love to see more movies surrounding.
There's a really good movie called Dark Song that I think might be up your alley. I don't know that much about like the Celtic side of the supernatural beyond like fairies and the iron and stuff. I don't actually know like what their witches and demon stuff is. I'm like, I can extrapolate some stuff because like of the religious makeup of the people that live in the country and stuff, but like I don't actually know what Celtic witches are like. Are they always dudes?
No, but a lot of them, I mean, it's witches. Okay, so witches doesn't refer to a gender because men can be witches as well. Warlocks doesn't mean male witches necessarily. It just refers to, oh, Adam.
Yes. By the way, it's a spinoff to the fact that like Michael Myers itself is a William Shatner mask. So that's just weird.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a William Shatner Star Trek mask.
I wish they would have had the guy that owned the store. I wish he had like a William Shatner mask, not painted white, but had like just a William Shatner mask just sitting on the shelf somewhere.
Yes, I too wish a lot of things for this movie. I wish so many things for this movie. I wish it well. I wish it all the best, and I wish it. I do wish that more people have seen it because I do think I agree with you, and this is my hot take. I agree with you that this movie does not get enough credit, considering how shitty some of these Halloween movies are. Like, Halloween is, like, revered as a franchise, but, like, honestly, it doesn't even have a good Dream Warriors-like sequel to it. Like, the Tommy Doyle stuff, like, that's all fine, but there's no, like, real good... Until you get to the reboot, even H2O kind of sucked. Like, until we get to the reboot, maybe Rob Zombie, definitely David Gordon Green, do we start taking Halloween seriously as we did in the first film? Halloween 3 at least goes for it. At least it's like, fuck it, we're just doing some new thing.
And it's definitely, it goes in a very unusual turn. Like, very few movies have the balls to not only kill a kid on camera the way it did.
Oh yeah, this movie killed a child with a pumpkin head.
The way it did with with bugs and snakes and everything, and the premise of the villain is literally just to kill kids, and I was like, I don't like you. I get.
Well, what's weird is he also puts the masks on adults, so we know adults can wear the masks, and it would happen to adults. We also know that he likes to set up like little test labs because that's how we see the kid die. We see the kid, even though it's supposed to be the planets all have to align for this thing to happen, we do see that before the planets align on Halloween night, he's just running some tests on the kid and his family, by having him watch the video of the Halloween thing. It's not even like the special giveaway part, it's just the commercial, and have the pumpkin head on and the little thing on the back beeps, and suddenly the mom starts going nuts and like laughing hysterically, so they're piping in some gas or something, and the kid's head like starts to rot away and he falls to the floor, and then snakes and bugs come out of the pumpkin.
It's a great visual. It's a very genuinely creepy visual. And
I love
so
this
quickly too.
Hey, keep that mask up for a second, and then imagine Adam's version, where the masks are Adam West, Peter Falk, and John Cassavetes.
Oh my gosh! Now that I think about it, I actually would love to see Adam Witt be the warlock witch dude. I would love to.
I just got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Resident Wiccan. No petitioners are called warlocks. No joke. Sounds hokey, but it's legit. I stand corrected. Thank you for correcting me, Amber. I really appreciate it.
I don't know. He is Celtic, right? He's talking about Celtic stuff, right? I just know the astronomy stuff seems kind of like weird. I also feel like it gives a bad name to Wiccans. Like usually witches get a bad name, but then people have to be like, well, it's actually Wiccan and it's not about like killing kids. They're like, no, straight up Wiccans should kill children, but also really believe in the zodiac.
Well, there's just like in any religion, there's so many different small groups and
zealots.
Zealots
and beyond. But yeah, I myself, I know several people that consider themselves active Wiccans, and they also believe in astrology.
Those two things make sense.
Yes, and but the thing is, a lot of earlier Wiccan beliefs really focus on this idea, this relationship with nature, and it's a very mutually benefiting relationship. So, and there's, Celtic versus a lot of, like, you see it like a New World. It was like a lot of the rehash in the 80s. So yes, absolutely. There was a real huge
That's what this is.
Thank you, Kim. And bastardization of the Wiccan ideals and religions, especially in the 80s and the 60s when came out.
Tim Franco's comment is dead on. This is exactly what it is. This is and I didn't realize until right now, this is the red hot middle of the Satanic Panic era, which is like in the 80s, people just started, like, the way that people are about like Q right now, people were about the idea that there were these satanic cults that were going to steal your children. Like, it's the same exact thing. It's like, but instead of like Hillary and the liberals and Pizzagate, it's the idea that like Satanists were secretly lurking among you and we're going to like take your children. So like all these, all these churches, all like the leaders of the community, all these members of pop culture and members of the government, like, truly believed that satanic cults were responsible for child abductions and murders, and that they drank the blood. And
that's like the play the record backwards, and there's some satanic message on it. Yeah,
and that's what this movie is.
Yeah. It was also during the 80s. I think it was like in the early mid 80s in particular when we first started getting a lot of stranger danger mentality, the fear of the other. But also we started getting things like kidnappings and real big crimes were becoming on. Obviously, we already knew about serial killers and everything, but we started getting it more on. But we started seeing it a lot more consistently, like on the evening news.
Right. Well, that's it. But that's exactly it. It's the idea of like the 24-hour news cycle hadn't quite started yet, but we were starting to get these news things that were like, oh, they need to fill time. There was Geraldo Rivera. Now we're starting to get these almost like shows where the whole idea was to sensationalize, abductions, murders. So suddenly it seemed a lot more prevalent, even though the statistics weren't exactly showing it out, like proving that out. It suddenly just seemed like these true crimes, America's Most Wanted. I'm not sure when that started, but like, these things were becoming prevalent. You were hearing about them, and then suddenly they were everywhere. So it became
hearing about it for the first time for a lot of people.
Yeah, it became a mass delusional conspiracy that Satanists were going to come, take your children, get their blood. That people and strangers in white vans were going to come after your kids.
We also as a society, like, had especially here in the U.S. obviously in particular, we started. There was this mentality, this idealization of the 50s. And this idea of a small town community, there is this weird idea that was a better time. No, things like pedophiles and kidnappings and things like that didn't happen before in the 50s. Heavens no. Now
people forgot all about that Lindenberg baby.
Yeah, we didn't have like the word pedophile wasn't like a thing until like the mid 80s. Like, no one actually used that word. They used other words to describe it, but there was no official word to describe it.
Well, moving off of that idea, though, but kind of on the same one for a second, I think movies like this, though, where it's like a thing in the TV, a thing that your kid is watching is going to like end up melting his brain or something like that. Is that idea of like turn the record around, and if you play the Beatles backwards, you're going to hear satanic lyrics. And this is, like you said, it didn't start in the 80s. It was a product of the 60s as much as anything else, like in the Mansons and like all these cults. And, but it's almost like in the 80s was the first time I think we saw something where it was like this zealous overreaction from the other side. There was no boogeyman. There was no Manson-like cult trying to take your kids. There were just kids that were starting to dress goth and be into like The Cure and metal. And like, it was this real sort of turning against them. If you can imagine it, it was like Satanists were like Antifa. They didn't like really, really exist. Like maybe some people would self-identify, but it wasn't a real organization or a cabal or like a conspiracy. But other people just acted like what it was and like convinced enough other people and became like a mass delusion across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of
evil pyramid scheme.
Well, speaking of pyramid schemes and mass delusion, and also cults by extension, do you think something I'm kind of curious about is that do you feel like this is a movie that does focus on, to a certain extent, a witchcraft and this weird combination of science and witchcraft, which I thought was very unique in a movie? Usually if we are getting witchcraft, there's, as far as the movies I've seen that's running witchcraft, there's no focus on robots and sci-fi world or anything like that. It's more based in nature and this idea of power.
This is why I love it. This is why I would love this as a TV show. Because like, yes, let's explore it. Let's explore Westworld, but with magic. Let's explore the idea of like nanotech magic. Like I love that. I love that idea.
Was that magic?
My technology.
They're just super smart and they figured it out ahead of time. Okay. Well, it sounds like you have some thoughts here. So, Robert, what are some of your biggest complaints about this movie or favorite aspects?
There's not really like what I would label as witchcraft in this movie. It really, like, all they really did was bring a stone from Stonehenge, going based off the idea that the stones in Stonehenge are mystical as well, and then they would take little bits and pieces of it and then put it in microchips. That was it. That is as far as like magic goes.
No, because he does the thing. There's a ritual involved, and that's what witchcraft is. Ritual is doing certain things in certain orders and expecting a kind of result from it, or hope, or like being more in tune with a greater force by doing certain things in certain ways. So this thing was a ritual, and you can see it because it works. Because when all the guys die from the electrochip, all the robots, it forms like a power circle that goes around them, and then touches the guy, and then touches the Stonehenge. So it worked. He did it. But the movie keeps going after that.
Well, I mean, does he die?
It's unclear if he dies, if he was the Stonehenge the whole time, because then the monolith becomes a picture of his face. Yeah, so was he immortal?
No, he got like taken out by all that as well.
But he glowed. He didn't really explode or anything.
No, and then he becomes the face of the thing, and then he just is no longer there. So it's almost like it's like in Wonder Woman 1984 when Pedro Pascal makes a wish to be the Moonstone or whatever, or the Wish Stone, and then
he should have turned into the stone.
And he should have just turned into the stone because like you phrased your wish poorly and like shame on you. That's kind of what happened here. The guy just his face, like the stone turned into his face, or like was a projection onto the stone, and then he just was not there. But the movie keeps going, which means that like this is bigger than him.
I honestly, my first thought was, for a split second, I was reminded of Powder and how he just pretty much became pure energy in that movie, Powder. Anyone remember that?
Wait, what a great reference, first of all. Great pull on the Powder. I love you for that, Alex. Second of all, is that what happened at the end of Powder? I don't think I remember that.
When I saw that, I was like, without really going, that was my first thought. I was like, did he just...
No spoilers for Powder. I'm going to picture that movie.
Did he did he ascend? Did he just become like pure magic? Did he...
Alex, thank you for pulling the powder out. This is a party now.
Yeah, we got powder at the party, guys.
We got powder at the party.
I don't want to think about powder.
The only thing I can tell you about powder is like Jeff Goldblum's in it, and the kid's got like alopecia, and he's very pale. But
wait, and what's her name? Mary?
Is it Mina Servino?
No, Sturgstein.
Oh yeah. So he kind of looks like one of those things from Dark City. Here we go.
I saw this so long ago. Mary Steenburgen.
Steenburgen. Yeah, I remember she's in it. She's not the psychiatrist per se, but oh man, I don't, guys.
Oh, it was actually filmed here in Austin, also.
But Powder was an albino guy who had alopecia, but also was made out of energy and looked like Death from Bill and Ted.
He ended up literally having the power to manipulate matter around him. It was like that. It was like almost like a very, like a much more advanced version of John Travolta from Phenomenon.
Yeah.
Wait, was it an alien? I think he might have been an alien.
In Phenomenon? In Phenomenon.
No, Phenomenon, he gets a brain tumor, and that's from aliens. Yes, correct. There we go. Anyway, back to this movie.
That picture looks like he's saying best 3 out of 5.
Well, overall, okay, so I do want to kind of ask you guys specifically. Now, how does this movie hold up today? Now, this has become, from what I've seen, it has become quite a cult classic for a lot of horror fans, for a lot of movie fans in general. But how do you feel like this holds up today? Do you think this is a movie that could be remade today? Or do we want
to talk about our favorite parts of it, or are we just gonna? Because I want to talk about my favorite scene, but we can talk about it doesn't hold up.
We can definitely talk about our favorite scenes.
Yeah, because there's some parts in this that are worth mentioning. That I feel like are very important. Like, let's get off Powder for a second and let's talk about that scene where the guy is running that test on like the family, and we talked about it for a hot second. The kid's head just falls off. It's not the first time we've seen something's head fall off in this movie. There's a lot of whoops. There's a lot of that going on. And there's an early other scene in this movie where a guy is walking in, and I guess it was raining, so he had his jacket over his head, but it really looks like a headless man is walking into the shot, and it's so effective. It's so good. And then like when he pops his head out, you're like, like it's not even a practical effect. It's just like a cool thing to do in a movie to foreshadow the fact that people's heads will be falling off like fucking grapefruit from a tree, from a grapefruit tree.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty startling moment in the film. I definitely agree with you. What about you?
Who is Victor Salva? Sounds like a bad person.
He was a very, very bad person. Just
okay. I forgot about what the guy thing was, but let's keep going.
Yeah.
Done with that.
What about you, Robert? What are some of your favorites? Any favorite moments, characters, individual scenes?
I like my favorite was probably the neighbor at the hotel, Marge, when because she was complaining about how the masks are crappily made, that the silver shamrock disc would not stick to the latex anymore. So the disc fell off. She put it on her table in her room, and then she knocked it over and saw there's a microchip on there. She starts playing around with the microchip with the tweezers, and it shoots the laser at her face. So you see like basically her face like ripped open in the middle.
First of all, that woman had, even though she was a kooky character, her reaction to seeing a microchip in the 80s was insane. To start picking it apart with tweezers when you ain't even sure what a microchip is, let alone what one's doing in a mask. I would just be like, witchcraft, like to that silver object that seems to be glowing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I actually, when I was trying to think of scenes that I loved, I actually thought of both those scenes. The scene in the room where we see the child die, that was a really creepy scene, and also the parents, their reaction to seeing their kid die, it was almost comical.
So the mom passed out, and the father got bitten by a snake, and that's how they died.
She was like, what?
It looks like something was being gassed into the room, though, because before the kid even started getting sick, like she starts laughing hysterically and being like, "This is silly, and she's like laughing and crying, like, so something's happening in the room. They're having some sort of like physical reaction. So I wonder if that means that like there is something supposed to happen to the parents. Like what's the end game? You kill all the kids in America, and then this thing from Stonehenge comes back, and then what? Hail Pyman or what? Like,
well, there was no mention. Well, there was no mention of any kind of gases or anything going in. But she throughout the movie, she has been not so much hysterical, but she comes off like really weird. She was like she would spray perfume in herself before she would enter the room, and he would constantly be in like he seemed like he was always trying to figure out. He was always trying to contribute to the team, whether it be sales. Oh my gosh, yeah, they're asking me here to watch some commercials and gives my
I guess it's sort of like a commentary on the people that show up for focus groups.
Yeah,
but like I don't know what kind of like cultural commentary that was supposed to make. Like
it was really kind of. But they dressed the room up like it was supposed to be like a suburban.
Oh, it's like a consumerism thing.
Yeah,
they're supposed to be like the ultimate consumers. They're like yuppies, but it's a little bit early for yuppies. So they're like, the mom's constantly doing. Sorry, go ahead.
He won the trip to the Silver Shamrock because he was the top salesperson of their masks in all of the United States. So him and his family got invited there, and
which is that's weird. There seems to be so many giveaways involved in this operation that I just wonder if this one guy is running it. Like, I have to think there's a cabal and there's other people and other also because Silver Shamrock isn't big enough to produce all of the masks for all of the country. I have to imagine there's Silver Shamrock outlets at different locations because this is a lot of responsibility. This guy's basically running a Willy Wonka thing. Like, he's running like a golden ticket thing. Then he's running a second giveaway that's going to happen that evening, which is the big thing. I know he has a bunch of robot helpers, but he's got to share the load, man. He's got to delegate.
I definitely agree with you there. It's clear that factory, that business in general, is like the thing that's running the town. And the way people in the town talk about him, I thought was really interesting. Oh, he's a genius. He's the smartest man in town. The moment the new people they drive into the town, everyone's like stops what they're doing and they look at him.
So is the town all robots? Maybe.
I don't think the town was all robots.
Are
but
we sure?
Because they ran into the homeless guy, and the homeless guy was like the one who was like woke, who was like, this is Cochrane's a bad person.
Exactly.
I honestly thought it was more of a cult, if anything.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
That's what it kind of feels like.
Yeah, it felt very cultish to me.
Mind control. I bet it's the little shamrock thingies. I bet these like mind controlling them. Like, right? I don't know, because I don't know if I bet it's a cult, because a cult involves like other people bowing down to him, other people like not just saying he's a genius, but like coming around or like being in the area and like worshiping.
And they were doing that. I mean, like when he was in the like the way people talk about him, but also even like the way when they were at the office and he was like, "Oh, Mr. Smith," and da 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 da. Thank you. Oh yes, of course. The way everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you are so right," and they would like laugh a little too hard at his jokes. But they, versus like the robots that were like really stoic and they didn't do anything. Apparently, the plan was for all the robots to have red hair to differentiate between the robots and the humans.
How do you make cult members all turn their head at the same time, though? I mean, this isn't a joke or a riddle. I'm just asking. Like, I feel like it's more like mind control.
I thought it was more planned. Like they knew they were.
Got a little thing in people's ears, guys.
Yeah,
5,
they knew they were
4.
coming in, so they were like prepping. Mm-hmm.
That'd be fun. I'd like to see the rehearsal for that.
Like it's set up like the Truman Show.
Yeah, or like Punked or something.
The Truman Show.
The Truman Show. Yeah, it's a Truman Show situation. Like I'm saying, guys, it just feels like a lot of work for one dude to be. I don't know if this dude was supposed to be a human dude who's just really into this stuff, or if this guy's like an immortal god or an immortal witch or warlock who's been alive since this amount of time, since like the 12th century or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of seem like they wrote out this movie, they were going through like the checklist of things that have popped up in horror movies before, and they're like, "Ooh, a town full of cult-like people. Let's put that in there." Okay, Stonehenge, let's grab one of those. Robots? Definitely need robots.
It really does feel like we read every single newspaper article that was like Satanic Panic, and they were like, it's in the commercials. Like, there are hidden messages, and it could be your neighbors, and also like anyone who's dressed nice, and like, and it could be nicely dressed men who try to approach you in parking lots. It could be like the guy that's like selling, masks by the store. It could be anybody. It could be you.
Dun dun dun. There's also, I think.
Is it?
No. I think that was kind of interesting to think about is that I noticed a lot of people in the town. I knew they couldn't be everyone in the town be robots because upon rewatched it, because there's a handful of people in the town that have accents and others don't have thick Irish accents, and I was like, this is really unusual, unusual placement. So I thought not only the human, but also there's this like very strong. I guess I assume like obviously Shamrock Irish, this really tight knit Wicca community. I don't like
so
something.
It's like Ragnarok. It's like
something that it kind of reminds me of like it's like maybe like Midsommar situation, only like Irish and Wiccan. I mean, like what's the dealio?
I mean, we could Google it, but I feel like the issue here is that we spend a lot of time on this weird ass town, but we don't get any exposition, and what we do get is like very rushed, and then we immediately jump off of it to like go on this other part of the journey, and this thing happens, and it's almost like we're watching. You get the sense that we're watching the wrong person's story. Like this was the B character, this was the Tommy Lee Jones in No Country for Old Men character, who's like doesn't catch up to what's really happening, and we're supposed to be watching another character who's a little bit more clued into the situation because big things are happening all around us, but we just keep seeing the same 5 commercials and this one doctor be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a thought process for sure. Going about it, is there so something I do kind of want to mention, we are going to be diving into, like I mentioned, we kind of dive into our favorites, our complaints, and all that good stuff. But I do want to ask specifically before we talk about any big questions or anything from the chat, all that good stuff. I want to ask, how do you think this movie holds up for a movie released in 1982? How does everything hold up between the characters, between the setting, between the weird magic, makeup, whatever you want to kind of go with? Is there anything in particular that you think still holds up to this day, or do you think it's complete all shit?
Still better than that movie We Summon Darkness, but like it's pretty bad.
As wacky, as bonkers as this movie is, I think it still kind of holds up. I'm curious if it was being made today, how exactly would it play in the theaters? Would it be well received? If you get it away from, even back then, if it was pulled away from the Halloween franchise, if it was its own standalone movie, would it have performed better?
I think I had the exact same thought. If this was not related to Halloween, I think this movie would have done pretty well because it just stands alone as a weird thing. It kind of has a Romero vibe in terms of like a moral or cultural commentary about like consumerism, about satanic panic. It does have this through line that feels like very much like we're trying to say something, which is pretty cool for like a movie at that time. And, you know, we liked a lot of wacky ass shit that came out of that era and ones before. Like we were into Argento and we watched the Phantasm, and you know, there was weird outro stuff, and this movie isn't poorly made by any stretch of the imagination. It's just sort of poorly paced, if I can say that. I would like to see it today made by like Grady Hendrix, who's doing like who's a great author who did if you've seen the Clark Wolf cameo in the movie I think it's called Satanic Panic, right, with Clark Wolf in it. That kind of reminds me of this. That was written by Grady Hendrix. He also wrote My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I believe is becoming a TV show or movie pretty soon. He writes a lot of like supernatural, but like in a cool way. And I think his very first one was called Horror Store, and it's spelled with an umlaut because it's like an IKEA that's haunted. I could see him doing this movie really, really well.
I kind of looked that up. That sounds fantastic.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. Also, My Best Friend's Exorcism is one where it's the 80s and they do an exorcism to like the power of rock and roll. He's coming out with one this summer called Final Girls, where it's like a support group for a girl who was chased by her crazy brother, by one that's been chased off of a camp, you know, like a summer camp where they were a counselor, by one who's being chased by a madman who stalks her dream. And it's like a support group for all these very clearly slasher based.
That's cool.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
I mean, that sounds pretty dope. That sounds dope AF. What about you, Robert? Okay. So if you had to put if this was being remade today, what director or actors would you love to see attached to it? And I guarantee you, I'm going to beat it.
Okay. It's not a contest.
It's always a contest, Drew.
Schmoebates.
What director? I mean, this is just that edge of weird that like I could see Eli Roth directing something like this. Probably go a little bit more, a little heavier into the body horror element of this. Maybe a couple of more heads getting ripped off. I guarantee you, if Eli Roth was directing this, the whole demonstration scene with the boy's head rotting in the mask would have been a lot more graphic. We actually would have seen what was happening to the kid's actual head, not just him pulling on a mask and then bugs coming out, and you don't actually see what's.
But those bugs, I gotta say, that was a pretty like even I was like, what the hell? Because
you didn't see what happens to the kid's face. You don't see the kid's face rotting away. You just see
the child murdered brutally, and his face.
It's all like sunken in and gray.
You know what?
All you saw was just the mask, and then the bugs and the snakes come out. That's it.
I've rethought my position. Alex, this is a contest, and I have a better answer than any of you. Alex, you go next. Who do you think is going to be the director?
Okay, so I actually have two directors that I could easily see this. The first one is Leigh Whannell. And the reason because Leigh Whannell, I feel like obviously is pretty great for a lot of different reasons. But in particular, I would love to see his take on something more focused on technology. We haven't really seen him do that.
He did Upgrade, which was
Upgrade,
literally.
Literally. I have not seen Upgrade, but I'll take your word for it.
It's good. It's really good.
It's like Venom, but it's with a machine. So it's like a guy.
I absolutely understand. I get the premise. I know everything about it. That's why I haven't seen it. But it's. But I totally forgot that he directed it though. But that's something I would actually, I think would be now, honestly, I think it would be a really great combination. This idea of technology control and integrating that into that kind of leadership role and weaving in somehow witchcraft involved. I think that would be pretty, and also this idea of cults, that would be pretty interesting. Okay. Now, my other big one, that's my big one though, my big one would have to be Scott Derrickson.
Okay. Scott Derrickson. That's pretty good. They're very relatable. I could get both of them on like the thing.
One of my favorite horror movies of all time, honestly, and for one of my favorite horror movies from the past like 15, 20 years would have to be Sinister. And I love Sinister. And I think it's really cool how he introduced this concept of someone being almost trapped essentially in the medium.
Yeah, the medium. That's very good.
And I think that would translate really, really well to this, but also introducing the idea of like this. I think he would do really well with incorporating this mentality of a small town cult really into it, and this idea of control with like the kids and everything involved. I think that it would be really, really, really cool. And also, I trust him as a director. I've loved everything he's done.
I think I actually really like Leigh Whannell and Scott Derrickson for this. NerdChronic, if you're watching, Leigh Whannell is the guy who co-wrote Saw, and he directed Upgrade and Invisible Man, and he's in Insidious. Yeah. So that's who that is.
He didn't do he's in the movie Insidious 1 and 2, but he directed Insidious 3.
Yeah, he's written all of them.
Yes.
He was in Saw. He was Adam, the other person trapped in the bathroom.
He's got a story by credit for all of Saw, and it's because it's him and James Wan, and he's got a story by credit for all of this. Sorry,
including Spiral coming up.
Yes, he's like got a story by, which means he created the main lore, like he created the world of it. So so he's a producer on it. So yeah, I mean he's mostly known for these weird roles. He's also in Bye Bye Man for some reason. That's I think the only time he's appeared. Oh yeah, and he's in the Matrix. He's in a Matrix.
That's what it is. I was trying to figure out. I knew of another role he was in that was weird. Matrix. That's right.
I read that. I read one of our Schmoedown colleagues' Matrix books. Kim Taylor. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting her last name, and I'm like the worst about this. Is it Kim Taylor Robinson? Is that who that is? Who she played at the Free Fall? Anyway, she's written this book. Kim Taylor Foster, right? It's combining two names. Kim Taylor Foster. She wrote this great book about the Matrix, and it has an opening by Leigh Whannell, who was in the Matrix, and I had totally forgotten about it. He's a good director. I like both of those directors, Derrickson and Whannell, because they both work with media, like the idea of like being affected by the screen and like the Marshall McLuhan
control.
thing
Yes.
of it. But I'm so sorry, guys. I'm about to beat y'all with my pick of Brandon Cronenberg, David Cronenberg's son. He did the movie Possessor. If you guys have seen, it's very, very good. So yeah, he's David Cronenberg's son, and he's like David Cronenberg on crack. He hasn't decided to do his own thing. He's just going to do what his dad used to do in terms of like crazy body horror and the idea of like technology and screens and the way that they affect our lives. But trust me though, like it's like Videodrome, but if Videodrome was like in the 21st century and crazier.
I don't want it. I don't want it.
You don't want it, but that's exactly what would make this movie today. You would see
I love Videodrome. I want it.
So that's who you pick when you want the heads to explode on the children, because they straight up, spoiler alert, kill the kid in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
In Possessor.
A kid dies in Possessor in a very graphic way. I will say that.
That's something I really loved about Insidious as well as Sinister, is the involvement of kids in the actual crime itself, the way that it's done, because usually it's done in a certain way where it's like it's never their fault or anything, but they're actually actively involved. They are conscious of what's going on. So
I like the second Sinister movie. I liked it because I like the James Ransom character. Like that clearly was just supposed to be a one-off movie, but then James Ransom, who you know him as played Eddie in It Chapter 2, and he's in Tangerine, a bunch of things. He was just really good as like the bumbling sheriff sidekick, and so they decided to make him the main character of Sinister 2.
And he was okay. And the reason why he is in Sinister 2 is because in Sinister 1, he was literally fired for giving an author crime information, which he was not allowed to do. So he was a really bad cop.
Well, we don't need to get into a discussion of what defines a bad cop these days, but this guy was a good human being, and he gave information because he knew the guy was in danger.
No, he did it because he was a fan of his novel.
Oh, he was also a super fan. That's true. He was also a super fan, but he believed Ethan Hawke that something was going on with the houses, and the information he gave was not even like that bad. He was like, basically, it turns out people don't die when they live in the house. They die when they get moved to a new house, and the cycle repeats. And the guy's like, "Oh, great, thanks. I'm already at my new home. Fucking, I'm dead.
Can't leave. Awesome, great, wow, awesome. Yeah,
he immediately dies." I think the other thought I had though was a Japanese, not a Japanese director, a Korean director. Is it Chan-wook Park, the director of Old Boy? I just feel like he is, he's so cool, and his stuff is so badass. And Old Boy is such an original kind of film. And if you watch Three Extremes, which is an anthology horror movie with three Asian directors, it's Takashi Miike, I can't remember if it's Chun Park Woo or Chan Wook Park, but him, and then a Chinese director, and it's 3 short horror films that are all done weird, and his is by far the strangest, and it's like a revenge story. It has all these weird elements, but it feels like the kind of thing that he could take all the disparate elements of this movie and make it into like a cohesive vision, or if not cohesive, then at least visually interesting.
Absolutely. I think the overall, I think these are all really, really fantastic picks, but I think at the end of the day, Tim Franco is the winner with Ben Wheatley or Karen Kusama.
Who are those people? I don't recognize either.
Karen Kusama, she directed, I think she directed Birds of Prey.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I feel bad. She did The Invitation.
No, not Ben Wheatley. I know who that is. That's the Kill List guy, and I don't think that movie is as great as everyone thinks it is.
Oh, I don't know about that one, but I know Karen Kusama. She did. I really. No, she didn't do. Okay, I stand corrected. She did not do Birds of Prey. I don't know who I'm mixing her up with, but she did one of my favorite horror inspired movies, which is Jennifer's Body, but she also did Girl Fight way back when. That was her directorial.
Wait. Jennifer Body director needs more work. Like, let's just shout out the fact that Jennifer Body is criminally underrated. Great film. They'd be able to make that into, I could see that being a good director for this, because you take the town and make the town a central figure more so than like the doctor.
But you could also bring in like a lot of the feminist aspects of it. Man, I want it.
She also did. She did the live action Aeon Flux also.
Yes. Well, then I still think my pick is better.
You know what? Definitely respect that. I respect the fuck out of that. Guys, we are going to be wrapping up here in just a few minutes. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it might be, or do you just want to tell us that our opinions ain't shit, please let us know in the comments so we can help address it. And we would love to know what you loved about this movie, what you hated about this movie, but also why should or shouldn't Michael Bay be the one to do this movie?
There's not enough explosions.
Cameo in this movie as a frat boy who lives in town.
Oh no, I actually think Michael Bay would actually be an interesting person to do this movie because I think what is a weird standout character in this movie is that him as a doctor, he's this weird anti-hero asshole.
Yeah, so Nick Cage is the really doctor in this Michael Bay movie.
And I feel like he's a Michael Bay character in this movie.
Kind of. I mean, there's not enough explosions. I mean, it would just be like, first of all, I don't know how they do it, but make the dialogue worse.
Fire.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to take this movie and make the dialogue worse, which I mean would be very hard to do. Michael Bay would really have to Transformer Dark Side of the Moon or whatever it up, but
the heads would.
I don't know. Michael Bay, I think, would make this movie more confusing somehow.
It would be. Yeah. It's weird.
Oh, he's saying Michael Bay with the robots. That actually tracks. Okay, because the robots, but they don't transform into anything. You know what? Give it to John Nolan because he did Westworld and fine, and he wrote like The Prestige. He like wrote half the ones that are good of the Christopher Nolan movies. Give it to Jonathan Nolan and his wife. So then we have that married couple doing a movie, and I always like when that happens.
Yeah. Also, Prestige is actually my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. Hot take.
Is it because you like the 3 parts of it? There's the Pledge. It's the 3 parts of every Christopher Nolan movie. If you watch The Prestige, you realize that that's what he's doing in every single one of the movies. He's like, here's the Pledge. It's a movie where time travels backwards. There's the turn, or whatever it is. Here's the drop.
That's a heavy majority of movies in general. No.
But the specific Christopher Nolan thing in The Prestige, he's telling you that there's 3 acts, right? It's the promise. Here's what appears to be true. Here's the what is the middle one called? Here's the pledge. Here's the twist or something, or the drop or something, then here's. Somebody tell me in the comments what it is. It's the pledge, the something, and then it's the prestige is like the acclaim. It's the ta-da. That's all of his movies have a pledge. Like Memento is like, this thing is going backwards. That's the pledge. And then like the twist is sort of like there's this story that this guy is telling on the phone about a family, like about a dude who's losing his memory. The turn. That's what it is. So that's the turn. And then the prestige is the reveal that they're both the same guy and this story actually happened to him and blah, blah. Sorry, I just spoiled Memento. But that's what he does in all of his movies. And I just really like the fact that he made a metaphor for it.
I thought the turn was essentially it's like if you make a bird disappear, the magic isn't the bird disappearing. The magic is being able to have a bird disappear, but bring it back.
That's the prestige. Is the bringing it
prestige.
Back.
Oh, that's the prestige. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, the bird disappearing is the turn. So that's like the twist, and the prestige is. But it's still here. And then the turn, I guess, would be the really important part. Pay attention to the turn, kids. The bird is dead, I guess, is the point.
I'm not, though. This is why I don't compete in Schmoedown, guys.
They kill the bird.
This is why I don't compete at all in any capacity.
The turn. Eric's writing the turn on all caps like it's something I should know.
The turn!
The turn! He also wrote Interstellar. He wrote most of them. Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of want to also know from you guys real quickly over in the chat, if you guys have any movie suggestions you would love to see us find out if there are movies, find out if we have or haven't seen them. Robert, what are some movies that you would love to see us dissect on this movie?
Dissect on talk about forever.
I am big on following anyone who wants to dissect the Shawshank Redemption. I love like any and all discussions on that movie. I
don't think we could ever dive into that one.
You know what? I was actually reading a tweet by my Tom. Remember Tom? He tweeted out, I wish that people were as into the Shawshank Redemption when I was a kid as they are into like, what was it? Like into like super or is into something else. So then we'd get all these BuzzFeed like articles being like, "Did you know that Shawshank Connection guy played whatever?"
Yeah,
whatever.
Byron Hadley is the voice of Mr. Krabs. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? The rapist guy that ends up drinking through a straw. He ends up playing Doc. It's not Doc. Sorry, not Doc Ock. He ends up playing, doing the motion capture for Norman Osborn in the Spider-Man game.
Well, then probably also Doc Ock.
Weird.
No, he didn't do Doc Ock. He did Norman Osborn.
Okay, so I mean, like, I know trivia about Shawshank. Like, I can tell you stuff like Clancy Brown decided not to take any advice from any parole officer, or prison guard that came up and was like, "I can help you with the role," because he didn't want the character to be based on anyone real. He thought that'd be like bad. I can tell you they actually tarred that roof of an abandoned prison that was still doing tours, and so they were like, "We need the roof tarred," and they're like, "Okay, well, get to it, boys." And so that's an actual just real scene of those actors being forced to tar a roof on a really hot day.
What is that? Is that building still being used today?
I think it was abandoned at the time, or not abandoned, but it had been turned into like a walk around, like people would go into it. I think it's since been torn down, I believe, and turned into another kind of facility.
Oh,
because
that was the Ohio State Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the show Castle Rock, the prison comes. Shawshank is like a pivotal part of the first season. I had a friend whose friends. So this is a good story. I have a friend whose friends got married by like reading just quotes from Shawshank. I guess that was their wedding vows, and everyone had to dress like Shawshank, and that was just, it always stuck in my mind. Like, what a weird theme for a wedding.
That's a choice.
Where are you going for your honeymoon? See Wataneo.
Honeymoon Wataneo, but you have to dig your way out to the wall.
You just have a puzzle in order to get there.
Yeah.
You go to a really sad apartment where there's someone carved their name.
I'd like to say that marriage worked out.
I can't take a piss without someone telling me.
I'd like to say that.
Now, unfortunately, it sounds like me and Alex have both seen Shawshank Redemption and know some facts about it. So that, unless we find somebody, a guest on who has not seen it, that might not be one. But is there any other films that you think Cinema Bias would be wise to approach? Films such as, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan, or any sort of war film. Yeah. It could just be,
Saving Private. You haven't seen Saving Private Ryan?
I'm not saying that I haven't. I'm just saying maybe it deserves somebody to watch.
It's a really good movie, but like the first 30 minutes is rough.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's super rough in the beginning of that movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because I'm a military brat. I grew up surrounding with a lot of people, soldiers and things like that, and also I grew up with a lot of people that have suffered through like PTSD and from various different things, and that was like one thing where I remember I have a real weird bias toward against some movies. Like I will not watch The Hurt Locker.
That's one I've seen weirdly.
Yeah, it's like from and I will not watch American Sniper because I've been told by like my friends that are in the military, they say those movies really
trigger.
They're not just they trigger, but it's done in a way that's incorrect. It's almost it doesn't necessarily fetishize the feeling that this like where people are excited to go do it, and things
like
I haven't seen it, so I can't really word it correctly. But versus
they glamorize
those, it's just not the way it's correct, especially and also movies depicting war in Iraq or is very different versus Korean War, Vietnam War, World War II.
Those are your friends. Yeah, you have friends. I'm assuming that have been in the war in Iraq versus friends that have been in World War II. So. And I mean, when Deer Hunter came out, people were like, "That is not Viet Cong. We're not putting people in cages. We were putting people in cages." Mm-hmm. Like, people are very divided. I mean, it's weird that you say that because The Hurt Locker I thought was like a really well done depiction of PTSD, like specifically PTSD.
And that's like I was just told that it's not only it's a very incorrect way to go about it, but I've been told it's very triggering, and I was told it fetishized it in a very or fetishized it or glamorize it in a very particular way.
Well, look, I don't like war movies in general. I find them just and having not been in war, but not liking loud noises very much. I saw Dunkirk in like IMAX, and whoa boy, did I hate it. Now that being said, I just don't like stories about trauma and sad things in general. So I haven't seen like Schindler's List. I don't watch movies that take place even during a war because I find it too bummer. But I saw Defy Bloods. I finally saw that, and that was great. Movies about war are hard, but maybe, Alex, what this is telling us is that we need to watch a war film. Maybe not the ones you mentioned, but a war film.
Inglourious Bastards.
Oh wait,
the Tarantino one.
What is it?
Okay, what is Stanley Kubrick's only war movie?
No, he's got several. He's got
Full
Paths
Metal
of Glory.
Jacket.
He's got Paths of Glory. He's got the one where they definitely
Paths of Glory.
that
Woman.
woman.
That's the one I'm thinking about.
Okay.
I totally forgot about it. Now think about it. Yeah, I forgot that Doctor Strangelove is technically.
He's got like 4 or 5 early war films, and they all are kind of intense. But I have not seen any of them. Let's watch it.
One of my favorite war movies of all time, and based on the very limited war movies that I have seen, one of my favorites is actually Paths of Glory. I love that movie. It's for a war movie. It's an anti-war movie. I would say Full Metal Jacket and Apocalypse Now also stand, and like Apocalypse Now is almost like a different kind of movie masquerading as a war movie. It's really just about like it's like a horror cult movie that just takes place in the backdrop of a war. Or Full Metal Jacket's a really good war movie. Fear and Desire, I think, is the one I was thinking about, where that one's horrifying.
Full Metal Jacket's good, but Full Metal Jacket's like 2 different movies in one.
Yeah, it has like it's sort of like a Dusk Till Dawn situation where the first act is one whole thing. A second thing. Fear and Desire is a Kubrick film.
So good.
That is very sort of infamous. I've never seen Paths of Glory though, so you can make me watch that. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it, because a war film, apparently, I'm not saying that I'm bad at war movies, guys. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let's just brush up on some war films. I also think it's the war movies in general is it can be a very difficult genre to dive into for a woman. Or remember people's like rankings in, or remember who was a subordinate to who, because there's just like a million people in these movies.
There's a lot to dive into. So anyway, I'm excited to talk about that movie in the future. But Drew, have we picked out a movie for next week?
I was going to say, let's do a war movie. Let's do it.
Do you want to do Paths of Glory? Do you want to make that happen?
Yeah, let's do Paths of Glory. Let's do Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory.
Okay, so Paths of Glory, circa, it's like a late 50s.
Yeah. Anti-war movie. At some point? Yeah, let's do it.
I'm excited. It's one of my favorites. So, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And we are going to wrap things up with a nice little bow. Robert, where can we find you, everything you're doing, and catch all your awesome matches?
Yeah, so you could find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Robert Adams MLP. It stands for Method Living Productions. You can find me all 3 of those places there. You can find me over on the Cinefanatics YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Cinefanatics. You can find me competing in the Schmoedown's First Class League. That's over on twitch.tv/the Schmoedown. Make sure you subscribe to them over there. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. What about you, Alex? Sorry, what you asked me?
Beat me to it. You can find me up there on Twitter at @real_AlexMack. You can also find me being part of the Call to Action podcast group. We're available anywhere podcasts are found, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. So thank you, and please check those out. Also, I am in the process of trying to book a rookie Schmoebait tournament.
Wow.
It's definitely in. I actually just booked. I just solidified a match here pretty soon. It's going to actually kind of come up here in a handful of weeks. But every match obviously requires a whole bunch of people. So please be patient with me.
Dude, have you asked Downtown Griffey Newman?
I have messaged him, but he has not responded. He has not seen
he is hilarious.
Yeah. He's fantastic. He's definitely. After his first watch, I was like, damn it, I like it.
Do you know what? Also, I watched that Woody Allen documentary, and they made a point in that movie to be like the very first person, who acted in any of his films, to publicly renounce and give all the money he made from the movie he was in away to charities for sexual assault victims. Was this guy Griffin? No, I'm saying his name.
Yeah, at the time, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was the same person. But yeah,
I was just like, holy shit. Okay, well, like I just have way more respect for you. Like, cool job, guy.
What about you, Drew? Where can we find you with your beautiful face and all your hair pics?
Oh yeah, guys. Well, I have like a movie coming out May 28th. I think you've heard of it. It's called Cruella, and it's about me and my puppies. Somebody was like, did you change your whole hair based on the Cruella trailer? And I was like, no. And I thought about it for a second. I was like, well, I haven't seen the movie. So like, I guess yes. And I have dogs now. So like, I guess yes, I did base my hair on the trailer of a movie that I don't expect to be as good as the trailers make it out to be. But you can find me there, or you can find me here at my channel. Please like and subscribe and rate and comment and say all the nice things. I'm VideoDrew across all social platforms. VideoDrew is one word, and it's all caps, isn't it? Isn't it? Yes, it is. Mondays and Thursdays, we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. We're doing the VideoChronic Pop Culture Quiz this Thursday. Oh, hello. Hello. This Thursday, we're doing a very special quiz that it's a fan request, Patreon request. So, if you go to patreon.com/VideoDrew, you can request things. There's tiers for asking for Cinema Bias episodes where you can come on. There's tiers where you can request VideoChronic quizzes. Our quiz is requested by Chris Ingle. We're doing the 1990, I'm just going to say 5, Mighty Morphin Power Ranger movie. It's going to, he's specifically challenged Eric, NerdChronic, to the quiz. So it will be written by somebody else. And I believe on Monday, if we can solidify the guess, we are going to be doing the new Mortal Kombat movie as a VideoChronic pop culture quiz. Hot take, I kind of really like that film. So that's going to
you want to watch that more than once.
I've watched it twice now. I liked it. So that's on Mondays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Tuesdays, 8 p.m. We're right here doing Cinema Bias. Sundays, we're back to Live in the Dark with VideoDrew, guys. And guess who's my guest? Guess for this
Griffin
Sunday.
Newman.
No. Guess again, and it's a woman. And she's been on Cinema Bias.
It would be LaShanna Miller.
It's Marisol. I don't know why that was hard. But yes, it's Marisol McKee, my recent opponent in battle, but one of my definite frushes in the Schmoedown female community, or just community in general. She is an incredible player, and she's low-key hilarious, and I'm really excited to have the Lady Statue of Liberty come on Live in the Dark, which is my in kayfabe, sort of half in kayfabe, half just Clark. It's a Clark Clan Superman thing at this point. I'm really unclear about what VideoDrew is, where she stops and I begin, but that's going to be back on 8 p.m. because East Coast time for Marisol. So that's going to be at 8 p.m. on Sunday, right back here on the channel. Like I said, Patreon also, because we do study sessions twice a week. We hang out. I'm going to be going back on Twitch, but everything's at VideoDrew. And check out, if you can, if you have Peacock, check out a show called RT Essentials. It's by Rotten Tomatoes. It is written by me and Lon Harris. Different episodes. And check that out. It's my first TV or streaming writing credit, and it's pretty cool. Mark Ellis is the host. And yeah, I think that's about it for me. Perfect. Oh yeah, and I sell stuff. I sell stuff on Depop. So go to depop.com/VideoDrew. I sell David Lynch stuff, like this this Fire Walk With Me shirt. Okay.
Make that money. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye forever. I love you, and goodbye.